We're all about retro here
What was
at
that?
AFTN.
Oh boy, we'll talk off.
And we're going to be talking retro football games next in this section. And I think it's time for my big pulled off at halftime announcement. Although I've now had second thoughts about what to call it. We've teased about being pulled off at halftime for a while. Now, finally, we can reveal it all. It's going to be the name of our YouTube video channel, devoted to football games. Board games, computer games, tabletop games, and also just some kind of retro football stuff, movies, TV shows, things like that. So we're going to be doing a lot of stuff on that. On the way here, though, I thought of a possibly better name, which was Can We Play You Every Week?
Let's go with that.
So let's have a vote. People, I'll put a poll on Twitter. Do you want us to be called Pulled Off at Halftime?
No.
Or Can We Play You Every Week?
Yeah, that's a lot
If it's
better.
board games and stuff, that does make a bit more sense. We could do something else with Pulled Off at Halftime. I don't know. But I love football board games, and I don't know, Gideon, you're a young whippersnapper.
Mm-hmm.
Have you ever played a football board game?
I've
Have you ever seen or heard of any?
Yes, I've tried my hand at Subbuteo a couple times. I enjoyed it, but it does take a lot of the brain to play. So
Yeah.
I was not a fan. I did enjoy playing it. Nothing to take away from the experience.
Takes a
from you
lot
two
of
lads.
the brain to play.
There's a lot of board games, though, as well, like dice throwing and various things
You
like
lost
that.
me.
So
You just you lost
I've
me.
been buying a few off eBay over the years. Some may call it a midlife crisis. I like to just think recapturing my childhood.
Yeah, I have this one football board game that I'll have to bring in for you to see sometime, Michael. But my favorite football related kind of tabletop board game is the Lego football games.
Oh,
Which Andrew Delbar.
I didn't know you could play
South-
games with Lego.
Oh yeah.
Well, not stuff that you could video anyway.
The show's just gone off the rails.
You know Andrew Delbar, right?
Yeah.
Surrey Cider.
Yep.
Yeah. Yeah, he does a tournament every year at the Lego convention out in Richmond. And anyway, it's a good time. I have a whole bunch of. I've been collecting them. I have a whole bunch. We need to have a tournament sometime.
Well, what we're going to do, and we'll ramp it up more in the off season, is we're going to shoot some videos. But we're also going to mention as well, we're going to look at some retro football soccer games on computer, going way back to the 80s. So there's going to be some tremendous stuff that we're going to be playing. All 8-bit and
Yeah.
The oldest game I've played on a console is FIFA 10, so I'm sure you guys can go back way before then.
I've got like FIFA 94 and PlayStation
boy.
1 and stuff. So, well, we're looking forward to this. And if any listeners would like to be part of this, get in touch. We would love to have people come and play with us in the studio, or if we'll go to your house, you can play with us there. Someone that likes to play fun games is Marty Neal, and he is rebooting a classic board game from the early 80s called Brian Clough's Football Fortunes. And it was basically the first, and I still think only, game that combined a board game like Monopoly with a computer program like Football Manager. So you rolled things, you then inputted things into a computer and it played games. It was a simulation as well. So it was massive in the 80s. And he's bringing it back. There's a Kickstarter campaign for it. We've pledged towards it. Some other folk in Vancouver have as well after we tweeted it out, so it's good for that. So I got a chance to speak to Marty this week just about it and excite you a little bit about what he's got in store. And I think after you listen to him, you're going to want to pledge and get this game as well. So let's hear now from Marty Neal. So we're joined now by Marty Neal, one of the guys that's the driving force behind the reboot of Football Fortunes for 2019. Thanks for joining us this evening, Marty.
Thanks for having me, Michael. Very much appreciated.
Yeah, looking forward to delving into this. Now, Football Fortunes is a game I remember from my childhood, and I remember adverts for it and seeing it in like old things like Shoot Magazine and Match Magazine and stuff like that. But when I saw you were doing the reboot, I was very excited about it. Now, obviously, a lot of people out here in Vancouver and Canada will have no idea at all what this game is. So first thing I guess to ask you is, how would you explain this game, and what was it about this game that made you decide that it should be brought back for a modern day audience?
Well, when we were kids, we were around probably 11 or 12, when a friend of ours called Brian Kirker His mum worked in a toy store called Leisure World, so she essentially brought half of the shop home, and she would have brought home various football games, so Football Manager, for example, the Kevin Toms classic, Match Day, etc. And then she showed up one day with this big boxed computer and board game, Brian Clough's Football Fortunes, and none of us were board game guys, really. We were more computer game guys and certainly football guys. So he brought it to my house when we were all kids, and the greatest thing about it was and still is the only football management game that you can play with other people, so with friends and family, as we're saying on the Kickstarter. So up to 6 of us could play at the same time, and it just really brought it into a social setting, but also encouraged real serious rivalry. Because you could be your favourite team, for example, so someone would always be Liverpool, someone would always be Manchester United. You could sign your favourite players, you could sign your friend's favourite player, all sorts of stuff going on. So yeah, we were very taken with it, and we would play football constantly, and then when it got too dark to play football, we would go and play Brian Clough's Football Fortunes, and so we just spent an inordinate amount of time playing this game as kids,
I was trying to describe it to some people. Is it fair to maybe kind of describe it as a cross between Football Manager and Monopoly?
Sure, yeah, I think that's fair, absolutely. I think that's a good broad description of it. I think it's got a little bit more depth to it than Monopoly, given the computer element as well, where you can play against computer teams. But yeah, I think that's a good way of describing it. Certainly the reviews in the 80s, so the game came out, the first version of the game came out in 1987, and there was a re-release around 1990, and then there was Football Fortunes 2, which even Giles, who made it, doesn't remember. So yeah, there was a sequel that was very kind of not very successful and is extraordinarily rare. But yeah, I think that's a fair description, definitely.
It's such a unique game because it's combining like the computer element and the board game element, and I can't even really think of any other games that did that. It was kind of groundbreaking at the time, and it still feels that it is.
Very much so. There's been so few, even over the years, which is kind of surprising. So the original publisher of Brian Clough's Football Fortunes, CDS, also did another game called Tank Attack, which was kind of pioneering in that way. So it was a board game, computer game, and there's been another one called Atmosphere, which also introduced a video later, so you could have a VHS video.
I had that.
Yeah, that was groundbreaking in its own way, So, but there's been so few of those crossover games, which is kind of curious when you consider how well it lends itself to a football management game, which was really the thinking behind trying to make a more modern version of Football Fortunes, because the format's still unique. There's still no other game that does that crossover format. What
prompted you to decide to bring it back for the 2019 audience? Obviously, there's a lot of nostalgia. Guys our age are always... I'm bad. I'm on eBay all the time buying old games and stuff and trying to relive my childhood. But what made you think it'll work now? And what's the reaction been to it?
Well, like yourself, I bought a copy of it. I found a copy in a charity shop, I think, initially, and then I bought it on eBay. And it was really to play with mates again at Christmas type thing, just have a bit of a nostalgia trip.
Yeah.
But it stuck in my head just how good the game was, and I put up a Facebook page probably around the start of 2017, sorry, I was going to say 1987, 2017, and it exploded pretty quickly with interest. So there was an existing community online, there was guys that remembered the game, but everyone that came through was very, very, very excited at the idea of maybe bringing it back. So it just sort of stuck in my head, and then I was introduced by one of the guys on the group to Giles Hunter, who was the original publisher of Brian Clough's Football Fortunes, and then Giles is still great friends with David Hall, who was the creator and originator of the concept. So I went to Doncaster to meet them, to essentially just meet them really as a kind of fan of the game, but also to discuss maybe the idea of bringing a new game to the market, and they were very excited about that. So yeah, it's timely. I think it's nice to reintroduce that format, that that approach, and also then to make a football management game that's social once again, because there really isn't one.
Now, bringing the game to market, board games, they're going through a little bit of a resurgence in recent years anyway, but bringing it to market, what kind of problems have you had? Was there any right issues, especially maybe around using players' names, because you know how protective all these modern day footballers are of their brands?
Yes. So I started to collect, just when the idea was decided that we would do a modern version of Football Fortunes, I started to collect football board games. Now, Football Fortunes is the only one I've ever actually played still, but I collected a bunch of these things, and it looks like up until about the Sky Sports era of the Premier League, there was quite a few of these things. So you had Gary Lineker's Footballer of the Year.
Yeah.
There's a Terry Venables manager game, which just looks crazy. There's even, from a Northern Irish perspective, there's a few real curiosities. Like there's a Billy Hamilton game, which is just very curious indeed. So there was a market, and there was a game, a bunch of games in that market, but it seems come up to the Sky Sports era that really stopped. That fell off a cliff. Maybe around licensing, it could have been that it was too expensive for the licensing. I think everything professionalised around football a little bit when the Sky Sports and the Premier League era came in. So where we find ourselves is interesting, because there's an argument that says that Brian Clough's Football Fortunes would actually be the first ever fantasy football game.
Yeah.
You could make that argument. I'm going to make that argument. And then when it comes to the licensing perspective, then you have fantasy football licenses, for example, that allow you to use various elements. So you can't use club names, so we won't do that without the license, without the FIFA Pro license. Now, ultimately, we would pursue the FIFA Pro license if the project was a success, but it'll be sort of like Pro Evolution Soccer in the initial stages, where we'll use Merseyside Red instead of Liverpool, various other things.
Yeah.
We'll be able to edit those to whatever you like, which is a fairly standard approach. But when it comes to the player names, as long as you're not using likenesses or trademarks, then you can use it under a fantasy football license, and that's what we intend to do.
That's fantastic. And one of the exciting things for me, because once I discovered your Kickstarter campaign, I can't even remember how I stumbled across it, but it got me looking then at eBay, and I was like, oh, should I just buy the old game? Because I wanted the old players and guys that I remember from my childhood, Kenny Dalglish and Ian Rush and the big stars of what was Division 1 back in the good old days. But then you've brought out, you've hit your half 50% goal, so you kind of brought out a classic pack. So you've got the best of both worlds. You've got the modern day players, and you've got these old classic players. And to me, that's very exciting, and I think it's going to draw in a whole new audience, I think, to this as well, because you're going to get the young guys and you're going to get the old guys as well.
Yeah, I think so. One intense frustration for me for 32 years has been that John Aldridge was a one-star striker in the original game. So as you know, the player cards were all rated 1 to 5 in the original game. He's a one-star. Now, in 1987, John Aldridge was the top scorer in the First Division for Liverpool, but he had just signed from Oxford United. And no one on the original team actually remembers how the ratings were done. They suspect that it was just written down by people in the office, and no one thought about it too hard. So I've wanted to fix that for a long time. So John Aldridge is going to get fixed in the new rating system. But yeah, we wanted to bring a bit of the original game, or certainly more of the original game, into the new one. And the classic player pack just made sense. And once we got to halfway through in the Kickstarter, we could afford to do it, which was great. And also we want to add a bunch of players from that classic 1980 to 1989 era that weren't in the original, and very inexplicably in some cases. So, for example, Glenn Hoddle, Chris Waddle, these guys are legends of the game, and they weren't included in the original game. So we're going to include those guys as well. And also we've got a long-standing tradition now of voting for the players' ratings on our Facebook page, which is a lot of fun and causes a lot of consternation in some cases. But there'll be a new player pack that features all of the original player cards, plus I think probably around 60 new players from the 80s era as well.
So that's fantastic. How difficult has it been to bring this to market? Obviously, you've got to, I read a little bit on your Kickstarter page, you've had to kind of source out who's going to make it and the manufacturing and everything like that and get in a timely scale. How has that been? And if the Kickstarter wasn't to reach the 20,000 that you're trying to do you have a backup plan for bringing this to market?
Yeah. So the great thing in terms of the logistics of getting it made, getting it distributed, all that stuff is that we do have Giles Hunter from the original team who made, I think they had about 250 games in their catalogue at one time. So Giles is an old hand at all this stuff, both from a retail perspective and also from a publisher perspective. So I've been able to bounce ideas off him now. I'm bringing to the game the Kickstarter stuff and the more modern kind of software online approach, because I'm actually the founder of a software company as well. So that's my background. So we've got a good team there and a good mesh essentially in skills. So yeah, we looked around a lot. We looked at manufacturing options in China. We went to a thing called UK Games Expo in Birmingham and met with a bunch of guys that make board games. But really, we were taken with the idea of making it at home. And there's a company called Cardamundi in Ireland, based in Waterford in Ireland. And it's actually it's competitive actually to make the game at home as well, which is what we intend to do. It's inflated the price a little bit, but we think the quality is going to be worth it. You know, China can be a little bit of a risk in that regard. And of course, we have Brexit looming, so we don't want to have shipments coming back from anywhere. So yeah, it makes a great deal of sense just to make it at home. But I think, you know, sort of in-house, we have the skill set that's required. And then yesterday, we had an interesting meeting with a distributor who are very interested in trying to take the game to retail. I think that they can possibly place an order with a few prominent retailers in Ireland and a couple in the UK as well. So there's a couple of ways of getting at the market now, the Kickstarter being one. According to Kickstarter's own analysis and various other analysis, if you reach 60% before the last 10 days, your Kickstarter's almost sure to fund. And we're pretty much at the halfway point at the moment, and we're at 58%. So fingers crossed we can do it. You know, I think we will. It seems to be you'll get a good surge at the start, which we certainly got. Yeah. And then you'll get a little surge at the end, which will see it over the line. And there's certainly enough of a community there, Michael. You know, there's a lot of guys that are, you know, really behind the project that haven't pledged to it yet.
Yeah, it seems to have really captured people's imaginations. If you were, you can't obviously give too much away, but if you were to reach the funding before the end, are there any other stretch goals that might come up? Do you have future plans, even once it's to market, of maybe upgrading the game somewhere along the way?
We did. We thought about this. So we've various plans for elite players, for example. And we're thinking about things like special abilities for players. So you can add, you know, a free kick ability or a penalty taker ability that'll just make your team slightly better for one game. So with various things, and really the intent behind what we're doing is to get a base game released at this point. But because you've got the application, you've got the app piece of it, we can release new features into the app that provide new things in the game without having to make new components, for example, you know. And so I think at the point where we could release the first game, we get a user base, get a bunch of guys to actually play it, get that feedback, for example, you know, then we would be looking to do version 2 certainly and upgrades and various other things. I'm going to keep it a little quiet because there's a halftime report video that'll go out that'll tell you a little bit more about what's going to come down the line. And I don't want to preempt that, I'm afraid. Yes, it'll be on the Kickstarter on the halftime report video, which is slightly ridiculous and features wigs and false glasses and various other things. So
that's fantastic. Well, good luck with everything. I'm really looking forward to getting my hands on a copy once it all starts to ship. For people listening at home that are thinking about getting it, I highly recommend it. It's very easy to play, easy to pick up. It's the social element. You can get it for £40 plus shipping to Canada. You can also get just a plug-and-play version where you can print off the components yourself, which is nowhere near as much fun, but if costs are an issue, that would just be £8 to get that. There's also a deluxe version that comes with player mats. So we look forward to getting it. Hopefully other people listening to this will as well. And if anyone wants to find out more, where can they find out all the details, Marty?
The best place to go is the Football Fortunes website at footballfortunes.co.uk, or direct on the Kickstarter.com and search for Football Fortunes. And we'll also ship before Christmas, Michael, so it's feasible as a Christmas present for your football-loving friend as well.
Well, we hope to do that. We're launching our own video channel of football games, so we'll be certainly playing that. And thanks for joining us today, Marty, and good luck with this. And I'm excited to see what happens down the road with it all.
Thank you so much, Michael. Much appreciated.
Man of good fortune.
Marty Neal there from the Football Fortunes Kickstarter project. Highly recommend that you have a look at the page. It's kickstarter.com. Just type in Football Fortunes and you will find it there. As of recording this show, so at 11:24 on Sunday night, they have reached over 12,500 of the £20,000 that they're trying to raise. Still got some time to go in that yet, so there's 11 days to go. Have a look at the thing. If it's something that interests you, definitely pledge. 3 people from Vancouver have pledged. Let's try and get that number up. Vancouver is the 4th most backing city of this project as well. So the guys all will be pleased to hear about that. It's a lot of fun. And as I said before there, if you're a game player, if you like board games, get in touch with us and we'll get you along to one of our recordings and we'll play some board games with you. And as Marty said there, this will ship before Christmas, so ideal Christmas present. You don't need to buy it for me though, Zach, because I've already bought it. But yeah, Football Fortunes, it's a lot of fun, and we hope to bring you a lot of fun with either pulled off at half time or can we play every week.